Ever pondered how a distant conflict, like the war in Israel, impacts the US economy? It's a question that might seem out of left field, but it's one we should be asking. Because, you see, we live in a world where the economies are not isolated entities, but rather they are interlaced in an intricate global web. Our planet has shrunk, metaphorically of course, thanks to the swift currents of globalization. In this small world, a ripple in one corner can become a wave halfway across the globe, and the US economy, being a significant node in this network, is inevitably affected by these waves. Take the war in Israel, for instance. It's not just a regional conflict, it's a global economic event. Now, you might wonder, how does a war thousands of miles away affect my daily life in the US? But that's just it. The impact isn't always immediate or visible, but it's there, subtly influencing the economic currents. Think of it like the unseen roots of a tree. Above ground, the tree might look self-sufficient, but beneath the surface, it's drawing nutrients from a vast network of roots spread far and wide. The US economy, in a similar vein, is rooted in a complex system of international trade, finance, and diplomacy. This system, while offering a plethora of benefits, also exposes us to the economic shocks from distant lands. And the war in Israel is one such shock. It's not just about the immediate fallout, but the long-term implications that can be profound, altering the economic landscape in ways we might not fully comprehend right now. So as we delve deeper into this topic, let's remember that in this globalized world, no conflict is truly distant. Every event, every shift has the potential to send ripples across the globe, affecting economies far removed from the epicenter. As we begin our journey, think about this. Is there really such a thing as a distant conflict in our globalized world? To understand the economic ripples, we must first travel back to the genesis of the Israeli conflict. Our journey begins in the mid-20th century. The land known today as Israel has been the subject of dispute for millennia, but the conflict we're focusing on took root in the late 1940s with the establishment of the State of Israel. This event, celebrated by some, was viewed as a catastrophe by others, particularly the Palestinians who found themselves displaced. This divergence in perspectives laid the groundwork for a conflict that has spanned over 7 decades and counting. The 1950s and 60s saw a series of wars and skirmishes, fueling tension and animosity. The Six-Day War in 1967 was a turning point, leading to Israel's control over the West Bank and Gaza Strip, territories previously held by Jordan and Egypt. This territorial expansion intensified the conflict, stirring debates about borders, sovereignty, and the right to self-determination. Fast forward to the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the conflict evolved from being primarily military to a complex interplay of politics, religion, and human rights. Israel's continued occupation of Palestinian territories, coupled with the rise of Palestinian self-determination movements, led to a series of intifadas, or uprisings, that further escalated the conflict. The peace process has been arduous and fraught with setbacks. Multiple attempts to broker peace, including the Oslo Accords and the Camp David Summit, have yielded limited success. Today, the conflict is characterized by intermittent periods of relative calm, punctuated by flare-ups of violence, creating a climate of uncertainty and instability. It's essential to understand that this conflict does not exist in a vacuum. It's intricately connected to the global community, influencing and being influenced by international relations, alliances, and most pertinently for our discussion today, economies. Now that we've seen the roots of the conflict, let's delve into its economic repercussions. The direct impact of the Israeli conflict on the US economy might surprise you. The United States has long been a staunch supporter of Israel, both politically and economically. This is reflected in the financial aid that the US provides to Israel. When we take a deep dive into the economic aspects, One of the most significant direct costs is the military aid extended by the United States. This aid isn't merely a token of support, it's a substantial figure that has been increasing over the years. In recent times, the annual military aid has averaged around $3 billion. Yes, you heard that right, $3 billion every year. But that's not all. The United States also extends loan guarantees to Israel, which essentially means the US backs Israel's borrowings on international markets. But how does this military aid work? It's not just a cash transaction. Most of this aid is spent buying military equipment from US companies. So on one hand, it means money flowing out of the US Treasury, but on the other hand, it also supports the American defense industry and helps in maintaining jobs. In addition to military aid, the US also provides economic aid to Israel, which is used for various developmental projects. Though this economic aid has been decreasing over the years, it still contributes to the direct costs borne by the US. Moreover, let's not forget the cost of diplomatic support. The US often finds itself in complex diplomatic situations due to its support for Israel. While it's hard to quantify the financial implications of these diplomatic stances, we can safely say that it adds to the overall cost. These direct costs, while substantial, are only the tip of the iceberg. The indirect impacts and the long-term implications of this conflict on the US economy are even more profound. But that's a topic for the next scene. For now, let's remember that every action has a cost, and the US support for Israel is no exception. Beyond the obvious, there are indirect consequences that ripple across the ocean. Let's delve into the unseen, the subtle impacts that the Israeli conflict has on the US economy. One significant indirect impact is on oil prices. The Middle East is a powerhouse of global oil production, and any instability can send shockwaves through the global oil markets. Even though the US is less dependent on Middle Eastern oil than it was in the past, it's still intertwined with the global oil economy. A spike in oil prices can lead to higher gasoline prices back home, which can impact everything from the cost of commuting to the price of goods on supermarket shelves. Next, we must consider market instability. The stock market dislikes uncertainty, and geopolitical conflicts, such as the one in Israel, create just that. Investors, both domestic and international, become wary. This can lead to volatility in the stock market, affecting the retirement savings of millions of Americans. Moreover, this uncertainty can hinder investment in new businesses and technologies, slowing down economic growth. Lastly, let's talk about American businesses with interests in the Middle East. Many US companies have significant investments in the region, from oil and gas giants to tech firms. The conflict can disrupt their operations, leading to financial losses. Furthermore, companies seeking to invest in the region might be dissuaded by the instability, missing out on potential growth opportunities. However, it's not all doom and gloom. These challenges also represent opportunities. Market instability can lead to investment opportunities for those with the appetite for risk. Higher oil prices can encourage investment in renewable energy sources. Businesses might be forced to diversify their operations, making them more resilient in the long run. As we can see, the economic waves from this conflict reach far beyond the battlefield. The impacts are complex, multifaceted, and far-reaching. But by understanding these indirect effects, we can better navigate the economic landscape and possibly turn challenges into opportunities. What does the future hold for the US economy in light of the ongoing Israeli conflict? It's a question that's been on the minds of economists and policymakers alike. Peering into the crystal ball of economic forecasting, we can glimpse a few potential scenarios. These visions of the future are, of course, speculative, but they are grounded in economic principles and historical patterns. One possible scenario sees the conflict escalating, causing a significant increase in defense spending. This could lead to a short-term boost in certain sectors of the US economy, particularly those involved in defense production. However, the long-term effects might not be as rosy. Increased military spending could divert resources away from other sectors and lead to a higher national debt. Another potential future sees the conflict de-escalating, resulting in reduced defense spending. This could free up resources for investment in other areas, such as infrastructure or education. However, a sudden drop in defense spending could also lead to job losses in the short term, particularly in areas with a high concentration of defense industries. And then there's the possibility of the status quo. The conflict continues at its current level. In this scenario, the US economy could see a continuation of the trends we've already discussed in previous scenes. A mix of positive and negative impacts depending on the sector. These are just a few of the potential futures we might face. The actual outcome will depend on a multitude of factors, many of which are unpredictable. Political decisions, technological advancements, global market trends, all of these will play a part in shaping the future. The future, as always, is uncertain. But one thing is clear. The Israeli conflict will continue to influence the US economy in ways we might not even realize. As we move forward, it's crucial for economists and policymakers to keep a watchful eye on these developments and be ready to adapt to whatever the future may bring. So, what does all this mean for us, and why should we care? Well, the ripples of the Israeli conflict reach far beyond the immediate region. It's not a matter of politics or economics alone. It's about the overall health of the global economy and the stability of international relations. Let's look at the broader implications. When a region like the Middle East, rich in resources and strategically significant, is embroiled in conflict, it directly affects global trade. Supply chains are disrupted, prices of commodities like oil fluctuate, and markets become volatile. This in turn impacts economies worldwide, including the United States. But the effects are not just economic. The conflict also shapes the geopolitical landscape. It influences foreign policies and diplomatic relations among nations. The choices made by the United States in response to the Israeli conflict can affect its alliances and its standing on the global stage. Furthermore, this conflict, like any other, prompts humanitarian concerns. The displacement of people, the loss of lives, and the violation of human rights are issues that resonate with us all, irrespective of borders. Understanding these impacts is crucial. Why, you may ask? Because they affect everyone, not just economists or policymakers. Whether you're a student in New York, a farmer in Iowa, or a tech entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, these global events can shape the world you live in. They can influence the policies of your government, the prices you pay for goods, even the opportunities available to you. Hence, it's not just about them over there. It's about us here and now. It's about how we navigate our increasingly interconnected world, where a shift in one part can create waves in another. In essence, the Israeli conflict isn't a distant issue. It's a global concern, a piece of the puzzle that is our shared world. And understanding this bigger picture helps us make sense of the complexities and navigate our way forward. In our interconnected world, even a distant conflict can touch our lives in unexpected ways. As we draw our journey to a close, let's recap the key points we've discovered. Our exploration began with the unseen impact of the Israeli conflict on the US economy. A conflict thousands of miles away, yet its effects echo across the globe, impacting many nations, including the United States. We delved into the genesis of the conflict, understanding the root causes and historical context. This gave us a foundational understanding that paved the way for the rest of our journey. Next, we explored the direct impact on the US economy. We discovered how the conflict influences financial aid, military spending, and trade relationships. The United States, as a key ally of Israel, invests considerable resources in the region, and these investments have tangible effects on the US economy. We then turned our attention to the indirect impacts. These are often overlooked, but equally significant. The conflict affects global oil prices, which in turn influence the US economy. It also impacts immigration patterns and international relations, both of which have significant economic ramifications. Looking to the future, we examined possible scenarios. The future is, of course, uncertain, but understanding the potential outcomes and their economic implications is crucial. Will there be peace or further escalation? Each scenario carries different implications for the US economy. Lastly, we zoomed out to see the bigger picture. The Israeli conflict is just one piece of a complex global puzzle. It's interconnected with other geopolitical events and trends, and these connections can amplify or mitigate its economic impact. In conclusion, the war in Israel affects the US economy in multifaceted and profound ways. It's a complex web of direct and indirect impacts, potential future scenarios, and broader geopolitical considerations. Next time you hear about the conflict in Israel, remember, its ripples reach far and wide, even to the US economy.